This morning I want to begin my sermon by sharing with you this great poem I learned as a kid. You will all undoubtedly, I think, remember it too. The author is named Robert Fulghum, and because I love it so much, I'm going to begin my sermon with it this morning. Here's how it goes. All I really need to know, I learned in kindergarten. Share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them. In big capital letters, clean up your own mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt someone else. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and drink some and draw some and paint some and sing and dance and play and work every day some. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup? The roots go down and the plants go up, and nobody really knows how or why. But we are all a little bit like that. Goldfish and hamster and white mice and even the little seed in the styrofoam cup, they all die, and so do we. And then remember the Dick and Jane books and the first word that you ever learned, the biggest word of all, look. When I was growing up, we had this poster hanging by the landing down to our basement. I honestly think that it was my mother's subtle way of reminding us to flush. I'm pretty sure that part of the poster was underlined and highlighted and circled. Yet as I began to think about that poem, not as a child, but as an adult decades later, I began to think about why that poem is still so impactful, not only for children, but for adults of all ages. And I think I know why. I think it's because the poem lists so many things that we are supposed to know and do, and yet so many adults fail to do anyway. If you make a mess, clean it up. We don't all do that. Say sorry if you hurt somebody. We all know as adults this is easier said than done. We all think that we are going to live forever like the plant and the hamster. And these are lessons that kindergarten students are constantly learning, but adults should know. And yet it's adults who often forget them. There's a classic Jewish Hebrew book. It's written by a man named Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. It's called Chovot HaLevavot, or Duties of the Heart. And what has always struck me about this book as being meaningful is not its content, but its introduction. You know, most authors, when they write a book for the very first time, try to argue somehow in their introduction why the book they are writing is somehow different or adds to the public conversation in a way that wasn't there before. That's actually why a novel is called a novel. A novel is supposed to impress us and cause us to think about an idea more deeply than ever before. Some of you may know the story about how when Abraham Lincoln met Harriet Beecher Stowe, who was the writer of Uncle Tom's Cabin, he is reported to have said the following: "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great big war." That's what novels, that's what new ideas do us. They challenge us and inspire us to change in a different way. Yet in his introduction to his book, Chovot HaLevavot, on morality and ethics, that is not what Rabbi Luzzatto does. He writes, in fact, that he is deliberately not trying to write anything novel. Rather, his goal is to remind human beings, quote, what we've all had inside of us all along, but things that we just forgot. And from time to time, he writes, human beings forget to do the right thing. There's nothing novel about doing the right thing, Luzzatto writes. It's just that sometimes, to paraphrase the Beatles, We have to get back to where we once belonged, to what you used to know. Luzzatto argues that spiritual growth and better living don't always come from being novel or doing something novel or different than you've ever done before. Sometimes you just have to remember that everything you learned you knew how to do in kindergarten. Wash your hands. Don't take things that aren't yours. Play fair. Flush. All of these things we learned, and sometimes we forget to do them. In this week's parasha, we read from a section, or I should say I read from a section, very long, known as the Tochacha, or the Great Rebuke. Half of the Israelites gather on one mountain, Har Gerizim, the other is on Har Eval, Mount Eval. They read a list of brachot and klalot, blessings and curses. Only what you may not know is that these blessings and curses we've already heard before in the Torah. This is like Moshe Luzzatto the second time that we've read them. We read them earlier in Vayikra. So this one we did today is really just a second reading of the brachot and the klalot. So we finished them. We're going to finish the Musaf service. We're going to go eat some bagels. We're going to go home from shul. And tonight, after reading this long, long rebuke, many of us are going to come back to the synagogue and we're going to recite a service that is called Selichot. We're going to ask God for forgiveness. Why? Why, after we've read all these long blessings and curses, do we have to come back to shul again? You know, admittedly, I sometimes forget which Saturday night Selichot falls on for Ashkenazim. Yet the Hasidic master, the Tiferet Shlomo, points out that there is a rule of thumb that helps me to remember each and every year. And that is for Ashkenazim, Selichot fall out on the Jewish calendar always after we read Parashat Ki Tavo, the Torah portion that we read this morning. Because Parashat Ki Tavo is the poem, is the guideline, the prescription about what it is that we're supposed to do. These brachot and klalot, blessings and curses, are things that we should have known from when we were back in kindergarten. And now it is, writes the Tiferet Shlomo, our turn by reading these blessings and curses to remind God that we haven't forgotten what we were supposed to know. And so because we are worthy of God's repentance, tonight and only tonight, Slichot and true Teshuvah, repentance, can begin. We are now a synagogue family in the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah. They are indeed days of reflection. What we can learn from our parasha, I think this week, is that there are two different pathways to change. Sometimes what people try to do is novel new things, to do something that they've never done before as a way of correcting something that they'd like to change. And we've all been there. How many of us have tried a new en vogue diet plan that didn't work? Each and every year I try. Yet the other way to change, as the Beatles once said and crooned and sang, and as our poem reminds us, is to get back to what you once belonged. These are what basketball coaches sometimes call the fundamentals. The things that we already knew are the right things to do that you learned in kindergarten. And so as we approach the High Holy Days, spend some time not only looking at novel things, but I want to encourage everyone here to look a little bit into yourselves. Sometimes, yeah, we need a new look to try something different, a novel, a new book. But teshuvah means to return, to get back to what you used to know, to where you used to belong, to those values, dare I say this Shabbat, that we first learned when we were in kindergarten. Shabbat Shalom.